Welcome to my channel, INTJ Island. Today, I'm going to tell you a tale which I named When a Goddess Calls. This is a fable I concocted a few years ago for my blog. I felt it had a moral to it that you might like to think about a bit. I wrote this under my pen name. When a Goddess Calls by G. Alvin Kuhn. I dreamed a dream wherein I saw a man of Athens who lived long, long ago, walking happily on a seldom used road leading away from the city. He felt the sun warm upon his body, and a breeze brought to his nostrils the aroma from the sea that he loved so much. As he walked, Hypulus, for that was his name, felt joy in the day and in being alive. Life was good. He was young and handsome, and those of the city held him in high esteem. Light danced off a pool to his side, and birds called out to each other, sharing their joy at such a day. He blinked to clear his vision because he felt his eyes had deceived him, but a glimmer upon the path ahead remained. It was as though a curtain hung across an open window were blowing in the breeze. But the material appeared to be more like light than cloth. He shook his head, but the illusion grew stronger until it began to take on the form of a woman. Its edges remained unclear, but it became far more than a silhouette, and it took on clearer and clearer features. He stood in wonder as the details were cut into sharp lines until there before him stood a woman. But not a woman, for no woman he had ever seen was so gloriously beautiful. He had never imagined hair as fair as what he saw before him. Thick as a garment, it flowed long and smooth and nearly reached her feet. The sea breeze teased at her hair, creating innumerable streamers that danced around her on every side. Despite that, what remained unmoved continued to run in silken glory from her head down around her perfect form, undiminished in any aspect. Her eyes were blue. He felt as though he had never seen the color before. The sky, in all its glory, was a travesty of the color blue when compared with her eyes. It was pure sacrilege to even call the two colors by the same name. No blue existed outside of those magnificent eyes. He fell instantly in love, but he was already in love with her hair, with those eyes. And to his complete amazement, the perfect eyes looked upon him favorably. They sparkled with joy, and could it be? He dared not think it, but he did think it. He saw desire in those eyes. His jaw fell open as though his mind had entirely left him. Her skin was smooth, perfect, without blemish, and it was the palest he'd ever seen. The marble statues of Aphrodite in her great temple seemed to be, in his mind, suddenly dark and drab. Hypulus found his heart catch, and it nearly stopped as his eyes looked closely at her face. There had never been such a face. The features were proud and perfect. Her lips looked soft, and they were bright red, but it looked as natural as the color of berries on the vine. She had not adorned those lips with artificial color. He knew this. That was their natural color. And suddenly he feared he was going to drop upon the ground as his life departed from him, for this woman smiled. Her smile was so beautiful it struck terror into his heart. Beauty so impossibly perfect was beyond what any man could bear to see. The sun suddenly felt as though it were a mere candle about to flicker out entirely as it cast a shadow beside the woman who possessed that smile. His eyes caught the motion of her robe in the breeze. He did not recognize the material, but it moved like a feather on the wind, dancing around her form happily. It seemed as though he were about to see through the insubstantial material, and he feared he would be destroyed if he were to look upon her nakedness. But it was not transparent. Rather, it was formed by light in punctuated twinkles, which flowed like clouds through the sky. They did not ride upon the cloth, if it were cloth, but moved freely over it. His human weakness had his eyes straining to see through the garment, but his inner mind told him this would be both wrong and dangerous. He stood lost in confusion and delight. Her feet were bare, but not dusty. Her hands, oh, they were the most perfect hands he had ever seen. Fair, with delicate long fingers, were too perfect to exist, but yet they did exist, for they held 2 sandals, intricately woven from the purest gold. If there were even a minute particle of any other element contained within the gold, he would be struck down by shock. There he stood, overwhelmed to the point of death, simply looking at the essence of perfect beauty. And then he found he had not yet reached the limit of his capacity to take in beauty, or to feel awe and admiration in its purest form. For at that moment, she spoke. His ears were treated to a feast of delight that his eyes had been drowning in up until that moment. Her voice carried within it every shade of tone and texture of all the glorious melodies he had ever heard, and even those he had yet to hear. No voice could be so beautiful. It was impossible. And then he realized that this vision had actually spoken his name. "Hypalus," she said, and she slowly began to walk towards him. Hypalus noticed in the past that a beautiful woman could look nearly perfect when standing still, but as she moved into walking, no matter how graceful or enticing she might appear in her motions, imperfections, however slight, would appear. Imperfections were normal. It was part of what made a woman a woman. A woman is human. But this woman, if anything, appeared to be even more perfect in motion. Once again his knees nearly failed him. He knew he should be struck dead for what he was witnessing. "You know me, fair one? How can this be?" His voice trembled in wonder. "I am a dweller of Olympus, and I know many things," she replied. Those eyes, they were burning into him. They were irresistible. Hypalus fell to his knees and cried, "A goddess!" Only by pushing his face to the ground could he tear his eyes from hers. She patiently waited for him to recover, and to risk a look up into her face. Once again she smiled, and it grew even larger and more magnificent, more beautiful. She replied, "I am the goddess Eos, and I have been watching you, and I want you for myself." Hypalus could not move his tongue. It completely failed him. He bowed his head in confusion and fear. What would a goddess wish of him? "Will you come with me to Olympus, share my palace, my delights, O fair Hypalus?" He kept his face looking at the ground, as at last he found his tongue. He didn't have the courage to look at this goddess, knowing that she may well strike him dead for what he was about to say. "O great Eos, I am not fit to be your consort, to share your life in any particular. I am but a mortal, and will soon perish, while you go on forever. What can I be to you? You will come with me, and you will share delights, delights that your mind cannot even imagine. Walk where few mortals have ever been, and, my Hypalus, you will live as though you were a god, for a time. What more can you ask?" Her voice was like a power, enclosing him, grasping him, and holding him immovable. It was unlike any sound he had ever heard before. Every part of his being was crying out to accept, to go with this ambrosial and Olympian creature to her land, her bed of incredible delights. But this man was wise, far beyond his years. "Fair Eos, I cannot accept your wonderful and unsurpassed offer. For who among men has ever feasted at the banquet you have laid before me in your words? And yet I see past the glorious delights you offer, and I can picture the day when the love and desire I see in your beautiful and brilliant eyes will fade, and you will tire of this mortal, imperfect man. I will have been at the pinnacle of all pinnacles within existence. I will have risen beyond the world of man, in order to reach the heights impossible for any who have not been assisted by the gods. And from there, whither can I go? what is before me but a pit of misery? Every woman would be a pale imitation of your perfection, always reminding me, whenever I look upon her, that she will not be you. You, the woman who is more than woman, the goddess who is far above all women of all time. Her charms would fall infinitely short of your charms. Her love might be deep and true, but it would not be your love. I would open my eyes each morning to darkness, and walk through each day in a pit devoid of light. Every street will be dim, and every day will be stripped of happiness. Spare me, I pray you. Do not ask this of me, O fair Eos, for when you grow tired of me, I will be a used-up cloth, torn from a garment, only worthy of being put upon the fire and burned. What would life hold for me after there was you? I see nothing left for which I could desire to live. Hypalus, your wisdom exceeds all else that you possess, declared Eos, for you have spoken truly. And, because I admire wisdom above all things, I will spare you. I will spare you the fate that you have seen, and I will spare your life for having rejected me. Go out from this place and return to your town, and though you will never perceive it, you will have my protection always. And you will have a long life, wealth, and will be happy in marriage, have many children who will love you, and your great wisdom will never falter, and it will grow mighty with your years. One day I will return for you, and you will find that I have even more to offer than you can ever imagine. Hypalus, you leave with my blessing, though you have saddened my heart. Still, I will take your words with me, and they will ease my loss. And what will seem like many years to you will be but a moment for me, and then I shall come for you. Suddenly, Hypalus found himself alone. Eos had gone. There was no flash of light or glimmering curtain. It was as if she were never there. But the bright day now seemed dark. His knees were weak, and for a time he could not stand. He thought, as he worked to regain his strength, that he would evermore take the image of perfection with him. But it was the perfection of a goddess, an Olympian, and no part of his life. It was like viewing a statue, carved perfectly and wonderfully, but not within his grasp. He had not fallen into the trap of touching the untouchable, for he knew that if he had done that, he would be undone for all time. Finally, the strength began to return to his limbs, and when he could walk, he carefully made his way back to the city. In his mind and in his heart, he carried the image with him of Eos and her beauty, and he no longer sensed the sunlight, the breeze, or heard the birds calling. Instead, he wondered, what had Eos meant when she said, "I will come for you"? Alas, I then awoke, and I too was left to wonder. I hope that you found my little fable to be of interest and to provide you with something to think about. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'll see you next time.